Happy Tuesday, YouTube. Happy Tuesday, everyone. And a warm welcome back for all of our guests. A hello from Zianu.
Hello.
From Quenwick.
Howdy ho.
From Gunderson.
Fuck y'all.
And Fratis.
Hey.
So, I think we all know what UKIP is, and I think we all know how demagoguery works. And, alright, UKIP, to be fair, are equal opportunities bigots, because they're not that keen on women, by the sounds of it. They don't like the gays. Where does the bigotry of this party end? And we're supposed to believe that it's just a few bad apples, yada, yada, yada. But in reality, we know the sorts of people that they attract and who are going to want to be their candidates. But they rely on pointing at a certain group. In this instance, of course, because they were originally a single-issue party. They were against Britain being in the European Union, and that was it. But their platform's anti-immigration, and you are supposed to hate and fear the Eastern European immigrant who was supposed to flood us, and it's kind of like, it's so anticlimactic. You know, the door's been open for a while, you're looking at your watch, the flood did not come, and I think the real question here, well, Mark Steele's question in the article, word for word, is, with no Bulgarians or Romanians, who can UKIP blame now? That's a good question, but another question is, if your whole platform as this kind of, let's face it, Nazi-style party is demagoguery where it's the complete demonization of a particular group, and then that rug is completely torn out from under you, basically, does this mean that UKIP, who have been previously in the lead in the polls, does this mean that UKIP are now fucked? And I'm sure you have a great deal to say on this. Zianu?
I don't know whether facts will matter at all. While I'm not familiar with this particular party, since I'm not British, and I guess it's a British party, but yes, I know the style pretty much, and it's usually about a sort of inner truth rather than actually being true. I mean, there's always a great conspiracy against the people, and it doesn't matter all that much if the real perpetrators behind the conspiracy are conceptualized as being the Jews or the Muslims or the lizards from outer space or whatever.
So unfortunately, facts don't matter.
Demagoguery, no. In reality, it matters very much, but I don't think it matters all that much to demagoguery, no.
But do you think that's because people just want to hate and blame and fear?
People don't want to hate themselves, and when they are pushed and fail to find a more productive way of channeling it, they need to feel that it's not... I'm not the one who is wrong. I shouldn't hate myself, I should hate them instead. They are the ones to blame, and who, quote, they, unquote, are, doesn't matter all that much. It's really interchangeable most of the time.
Right, yeah. Quenwick, your thoughts?
I don't believe I am really qualified in talking much about really deep psychology. So, but it seems to make sense that basically people like and people find easy, or at least easier, to blame someone else for things. And hasn't that really happened all throughout history anyway?
Yeah.
Basically, that's it.
Okay, Gunderson?
I don't think it's really going to make any difference whatsoever to, or very little at least, to their... maybe some people will not vote UKIP now that this has come out, but I think for the most part they're still going... Those who believe that the foreigners and the immigrants are coming over to do this and that, they're going to believe it regardless of what the facts say. Because the facts, what do facts matter, when I've got my neat little narrative. But I mean, the thing is, Nigel Farage even recently said, it's reasonable to feel uncomfortable with having a Romanian neighbour, which is what they used to say about Asian people back in the 70s.
Indeed, yes. If you want a nigger for a neighbour, vote Lib Dem or Labour. But yeah, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, Nigel Farage is the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party. So yeah, I mean, do you think that radio interview was more harmful to him than the fact that we haven't got loads of Romanians and Bulgarians, quote unquote, flooding us?
Oh, I didn't ever watch the interview, but I have heard it's pretty disastrous. So,
yeah.
So I mean, that at least it won't help his credibility.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that he had to be saved by an advisor, rescued from that interview. It just seems to me, because I have 5 UKIPers on my Facebook, that I kind of want them to remove me. But the thing is there a chance of getting them to pay attention to anything? Because if they pay attention, well, do they actually believe these horrible things, the racist things, the misogynist things, the homophobic things that candidates have been coming out with, or politicians have been coming out with? Because it's every day. It's like, I think what happens is when UKIP say there's a conspiracy against them, they are not just bitch whining. They're trying to get their supporters to ignore anything that would basically, it's a cult mentality. I think that these are kind of brainwashed people by fear, and they won't see or hear.
It's maintaining the echo chamber.
Yeah. Francis, your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, the interview is, I think, way more devastating than lots of Bulgarians and Romanians not appearing, because you don't need many Bulgarians or Romanians or Pakistanis or Iranians or whatever they are to create this narrative. You just need that one person, owning that corner store around in your neighborhood, or I don't know, working that job or something. That's enough. I mean, that is enough for a lot of people. I mean, especially if you've been unemployed for a long time, things like this. Tribal mentality is very easy to get people into, us versus them, Britons first, or something silly like that, which is another party. But, that tribal mentality is really, really easy to sell and very hard to disprove, or very hard to convince people that it's not so. So that's the problem. But I think the interview was more devastating. In the sense is that you have very nice sound bites, which I think an American news producer once said that sound bites rule the news, and they do. A sound bite like, I don't know, like some of the ones Farage produced in this train wreck of an interview, can ruin a party. Just look at the 2010 BNP implosion after that question time with Nick Griffin.
Yeah.
Which just made his party completely implode.
Yeah. Zenu?
Well, us versus them mentality, it is a part of human nature, and it becomes very destructive when it becomes totalitarian, when people are reduced to being just one category. I mean, in sports and politics, it can be a good thing, parties competing with each other, sports team competing with each other, and so on. But when we reduce people to a category, then it becomes extremely problematic.
But that's what they're doing. It's us versus the immigrants. And
exactly.
That's what the problem. One of the problems with these kinds of parties is that it's us versus them, and that's the kind of mentality they sell. And it's, like I said, a very effective mentality to sell, and very easy to sell.
Yeah. But yes. As a German very aware of your history, do you see a very strong echo of the Nazis in this?
It's hard to say. I think the Nazis had a similar strategy, but this isn't the first party to try this strategy and fail. A lot of parties since then have tried this strategy and failed. You need a certain kind of clout to pull off the strategy. Are we in an age where this strategy is viable and capable? Yes. We have a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, who feel very angry at the voting, at the elected officials. We feel a lot of people are very afraid of immigration. We have a lot of people who have the classical things what helped the Nazis get voted in. A large recession now would be a disaster, to be honest, because then we'd have all the factors that helped the Nazis get into parliament with a large majority. But I think till now we've seen every party implode in catastrophical ways in one interview or another and not be able to save themselves.
Yeah.
Which has been, I guess, lucky in some senses, because some of these interviews is just, God, they've been awful. I mean, the Question Time with Nick Griffin a couple of years back was a disaster for that party. The interview now with Nigel Farage, I think, is going to haunt him for a very long time.
Hopefully.
I mean, that one quote, when he asked him what's the difference between Germans, his wife being German, and Romanians moving in next door, and he says, "You know the difference," in a very despicable undertone, is going to haunt him for a long while. It is just too good a soundbite not to use.
Yeah. I think my closing thought on this is going to be a quote I saw on YouTube. I'm going to paraphrase it, and I can't remember the name of the guy, but it's something like, "I fear people think that fascism always comes with people with grotesques in fancy dress. That it's like a rerun of a World War II movie with people with stormtroopers in uniforms. But no, fascism comes as your friend." Zianu, closing thoughts and goodbye?
Well, I strongly agree with what you just said. And there's one thing that's been puzzling me so much over the years, where I sometimes encounter people who consider themselves to be anti-fascist. They are so much against fascism that they want to identify all fascists and have a final solution to the fascist problem, pretty much having, well, putting up concentration camps and gassing all imagined fascists, and they can't see that this is fascism. So that is my final remark, that this whole totalitarian kind of us versus them is the problem, much more than what groups are being assigned. Good night, everyone.
And Fenwick?
What you said earlier, your finishing quote, Alex, reminded me of this quote that has been misattributed to an American Nobel laureate of literature, whose name I can't remember, but which basically says, "When fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross."
Yeah.
Basically, it will come looking like a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's your goodbye.
Yes, that's my goodbye.
That's your goodbye. Okay. And final thoughts and goodbye, Gunderson.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to what's already been said.
Just a goodbye then?
Yeah, so yeah, goodbye.
And Fratis, final thoughts and goodbye.
I was trying to find a quote, but I can't remember the hell of me where the quote was. But it's basically a quote from a German politician saying that he does not fear the Nazis wearing jackboots and uniform, but the ones in fine dresses in the upper classes. I think that that's the true thing to take from parties like UKIP and others, and this kind of debate.
Yeah.
It's not to worry about the ones that you can openly see, but the ones you can't. God no, I cannot remember the quote from For the Life of Me. I will go and find it, and maybe I will post it in the comments or something.
Okay. And on a sort of lighter note, I did like how Mark Steele in his article made reference to Cybermen. Because I definitely do fear fascism if it comes in the form of Cybermen. However, I am also open. If a Cyberman wants to come here and live peacefully and work here, then I completely support that. So, on that bombshell, it's a good night from me.